Buying Australian-made products and homegrown produce has become a much talked about issue in recent years. But do we, as consumers, make enough of an effort to purchase Australian goods or support companies that are Australian-owned? Welcome to Good Business. I'm Kathy Davis, and in today's episode we focus on Australian-owned companies and business. On the panel we have Better Business Director and business expert Brian Brown, and Sealy's National Sales and Marketing Manager Ross Gage to discuss Australian-made products. Later we go on location to Bowers Organic Farm to interview owner and manager Rob Bower on his family-run business and the importance of Australian-grown produce. Finally, we hear from economics expert Professor Ian Harper on the importance of Australian businesses. Many of us will recognise the iconic AMAG logo, which stands for Australian Made and Australian Grown, but only 68% of shoppers make their purchase based on this information. Are Australian-made products and Australian-grown produce selling points for consumers? Welcome to the panel, Brian.
Thank you.
What do you consider to be an Australian product? Is it just made in Australia or with Australian materials and ingredients?
Really good question, and it depends on who you talk to. What I personally would look at is, I'll be looking at Australian-made, Australian products, Australian labour. Now, the government will have a different view on that. It can be a component. Sometimes if it's a 20 or 30% component of Australia, sometimes that could just be the design, and sometimes that would be called Australian-made. But in our view in marketing, if it's all made here in Australia, Australian labour and design, it should be Australian-made.
Can be a little bit misleading sometimes, can't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, you really have to read the fine print on the label to have the true picture.
Yes.
Why do you think Australian products aren't doing as well as we'd like in our market?
We are in a global market, and it comes down to imports. I'm not saying imports are bad, but we compete on price. And people, again, in the marketplace look at price. If everyone's marketing the same way and everyone gets the same information, purely at the end of the day, they look at price. Now, products that come in overseas, it's not so much the cost of the product, it's the labour component. And here in Australia, we can't compete with that labour component as overseas.
Because of the higher wages?
Absolutely.
Whose responsibility is it to make the necessary changes in the market to help out Australian businesses and products?
Look, we could all blame the government, but I always like to say, have a look in the mirror and start from there. I think we can look at what we can do in our own businesses and how we can promote that better to the market, so we actually stand out from those imports.
Is there a way that businesses could stimulate or create this change themselves?
Going back to that again is better marketing, the way they project their product, and why someone should buy from them as opposed to someone else.
Thanks very much, Brian. And that was a very enlightening discussion that's really added some perspective to the topic. After the break, we visit Bowers Organic Farm and talk with Rob Bower about his family-run business and the importance of organically grown Australian produce. Welcome back to Good Business. We recently spoke with Rob Bower, the owner and manager of Bowers Organic Farm, who supplies restaurants and markets nationwide with their traditionally grown produce. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, my name's Rob Bower from Bowers Organic Farm, and actually this is a farm that was settled by my great-grandfather back in 1885. I'm the fourth generation on the farm. Myself and two sons are here now and a few grandkids, and we have about 1,000 acres now. About 500 of that we use for growing certified organic veggies, and the other half used for running beef cattle, certified organic beef cattle. I think we've got time on our side. We started off about 30 years ago, or I started off about 30 years ago, not using poisons. Before that I did use poisons, but 30 years ago I took the decision to stop using poisons and grow completely without poisons, which later on became certified organic. In 1992 we became certified organic, and we've grown steadily since then. Now why have we become quite large now? And that's because we market well, we promote well, and we only market top quality produce. At the moment we're harvesting potatoes, celery, carrots and a few sweet potatoes. I think the homegrown being grown in Australia, I think that's extremely important because we've already lost a lot of our production of primary product. The valley has lost beans, peas, corn that used to be grown here and marketed in the frozen state. So a lot of the processed stuff in the supermarkets and in the other shops is now not grown in Australia. So really fresh produce is our last stand. So it's important that we get that connection with the consumer, with our fresh produce, and hopefully the consumer will support us and buy Australian grown. We market it any way we can think of, so it's marketed all over Australia through organic stores, through home delivery people, through the supermarkets. Some of it's sent overseas, and more recently we've just started up, the last 6 weeks we've started up a home delivery direct from our farm, and only what we grow on our farm, straight to the housewife or house husband, straight to the kids, yeah. The two major supermarkets, Coles and Woolies, both take the majority of our produce, yeah. Directly, Coles been getting our stuff directly for 4 or 5 years, and Woolworths have just started this year getting directly, but we have been selling them through another agent for a fair while. Look, the key is to get government support so that the housewife and house husband know where their product's coming from, so it's clearly marked and clearly labelled, so the discerning buyer knows where it comes from. Yeah, it's a few of the reasons why we have been successful is because we're lucky enough to have some of the best soil in the world here at Mount Sylvia in the Lockyer Valley. We have some wonderful underground water. It's drinkable, it's like tank water, so we use that for irrigation. And we have a climate that's very, very good. And we grow stuff in season, and we grow it organically, so it hasn't got any poisons in it, so it tastes magnificent. One of the really satisfying things for me is to see the truckloads of organic produce going out every day without poisons on, going to feed our young kids, and that's really satisfying because I know they can't make a choice for themselves, so they're relying on somebody else. So as a farmer, we feel responsible to feed them food that's non-poisoned. An important point in the whole turnout is the fact that people can come to the farm, and we have field days regularly. We advertise on our website and see where the product's grown and make that connection with an Aussie farm, one of their own farms. And in the future, it would be great to see the whole of Australia turn organic. I think that's what we should do. We're the youngest, cleanest country in the world probably, and we could do it.
That was Rob Bauer with his beautiful organic produce and family-run business. Ross Gage, Sealy's National Sales and Marketing Manager, joins us on the panel now, and he's with Brian Brown, and let's discuss the Australian produce topic further. Firstly with Brian. Brian, how would Australia's economy do better if Australian farmers were more successful?
Excellent question, Kathy. Most people are aware that there's government subsidies available for farmers. That's taxpayers' money. I mean, if farmers were more successful, will there be less strain on that as well? More successful farmers mean more local employment, more money kept in the economy, more profits and more jobs available.
How important is the size of Australia's population to the economy?
Look, we are in a global market now, so what a lot of people aren't seeing is that we can export. Being a global market, we can export. So yes, we can work within Australia and people do exceptionally well, but we can also export as well.
Thanks very much, Brian. Ross, is the Australian marketplace similar to other markets that Sealy operates in?
Well, obviously, when we make mattresses, so a little bit different to making carrots or growing carrots or potatoes, but we are fighting increased importation pressures, and therefore we fight many of the same challenges that the produce industry fights.
The Australian-made logo is very recognisable. When did you first start displaying the Australian-made logo on Sealy products?
Right. Well, Kathy, we've been manufacturing beds in Australia since 1923. So we're very vested in Australian manufacturing. We're nearly 90 years. But we started using the Australian-made logo in 2006.
Did it make a big difference to the sales?
It has made a difference. I think anywhere we can raise the profile that our products are Australian-made and supporting Australian jobs, I think that's a good thing. So hard to put an exact measurement on it, but we fervently believe it's aided our cause.
How involved are you in the Australian Made campaign?
We're very involved. We do a lot of things ourselves outside of the Australian Made campaign to promote that we make our own products here in Australia, but we feature the Australian Made campaign in our television commercials, obviously on our product at the floor level in a retail store. We try to make that very visible on our website, in our customers' catalogues as well. So, you know, we spread it wide and far, as wide as we possibly can, as frequently as we possibly can.
Does it make a difference when you're selling in export markets, for instance, China?
Yeah, China, you know, we do export some products to China, and the fact that it's made in Australia certainly adds an element to it. I think, you know, people revere the fact that that the product is made in Australia because it just gives a connotation of great quality and great performance. That's
great to hear. What have been the latest big moves from the Australian Made campaign towards improving the sustainability of Australian products?
Well, I guess the Australian Made campaign's got involved heavily in the produce area, and while it's not, as we said earlier, directly aligned to our product, anywhere that the profile of the Australian Made campaign is lifted, well, we feel we get a benefit from it as well. But, you know, there's so many things we do ourselves that are important in competing against imported products. And we look at what can we do that they can't do. We can deliver beds to customers in 3 to 4 days' time. That's hard from offshore, so that's one great thing we can do. We really focus on high quality, so consumers ensure that they get what they paid for, and it's of a great standard. We continue to innovate, so bring new things to the marketplace, new technologies, new looks to our product. Again, it puts the imported products into a catch-up position. We keep our brand very strong, and we look in our manufacturing base for efficiencies wherever we possibly can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ross. Coming up after the break, we continue looking at the importance of Australian business and Australian products, hearing from Professor Ian Harper. You're watching Good Business. Welcome back to Good Business. Before the break, we were discussing Australian-made and grown produce. Now we'll cross to Ian Harper to hear his take on the survival of Australian business and products in our economy.
Professor Ian Harper, I know it's been said of you that you can speak equally comfortably with an academic audience as a business audience, so I'm going to appeal for the latter. When we look at the economy as it stands in Australia today, what's your overview of where we are as a nation?
The Australian economy at present is in transition from the second of 3 phases of the mining boom into the third. The second phase is the investment phase, responding to increases in commodity prices. Those commodity prices have started to come off. We're almost reaching the peak of the investment phase, and we're moving into the third phase, which is the export phase, when all the investment that we've put in place starts to produce minerals, oil and gas for export.
Now, that certainly has been very topical for us as a nation to see that as a base for us to work from. But I was interested in your thoughts around globalisation and the impact that that's had on a nation that is fairly relatively small. How do you see that in terms of, it seems that there's been an erosion of the local business. I was interested in your thoughts around the impact of globalisation on a nation like Australia.
Australia is what economists describe as a small open economy, which means obviously it's small, but it trades openly. And we have done really throughout our settled European history. And our experience of that trading environment is that it's produced the living standard that we enjoy today in Australia. So globalisation is both a challenge and an opportunity for a country like us. Yes, it will be a challenge because many local businesses, as you say, won't be able to compete against imports in particular areas. But in other areas, there are enormous opportunities for us to export into markets which are far larger than the domestic market here in Australia.
Have we really embraced what those opportunities are, or are we a bit nervous?
I think we're a bit nervous, but I also think that a new generation, particularly of younger Australians who are much more comfortable travelling in the region, they in many cases have studied alongside people who live in the region, in increasingly many cases actually studied in the region themselves, much more comfortable with the idea of doing business in different parts of the world. So I think we're changing and growing with the region in which we find ourselves, and the opportunities are just wonderful.
And in southeast Queensland and through areas like Springfield, Ipswich City is obviously a hotspot for massive growth. What's your take on this whole notion of the live, learn, work, play philosophy?
It's something whose time has come. Increasingly, people will need to be learning continuously throughout their careers because the knowledge base is changing so rapidly. And new techniques completely revolutionise the way things have traditionally been done. So the idea that, for example, when I was growing up, that you'd go to school and university and that'd be it, you'd go off and work for the rest of your career, that won't be the experience. It isn't the experience of younger people already. So putting all that together, as they do here in Springfield, I think is a terrifically foresighted idea to integrate people's lives, their learning, their work, will make them far more productive and improve living standards.
Now, you were, as the inaugural chair around the Fair Pay Commission. How fair is our structure now? I know you've worked hard in the Howard government era, but are you happy with where we are in our pay conditions?
Look, I think the question of pay and conditions is always a fraught one. As I discovered when I was chairing the commission, you pretty quickly realise that what is a cost to a business is somebody's livelihood. And both parties to a claim about wages have an important point to make. On the one side, that if it's too expensive, I can't hire you. On the other side, if you don't pay me enough, I can't live. So I think that question will always be one about which there's a lot of debate. Australia's institutions are unique in this regard. When I was chairing the Fair Pay Commission, we tried to make this process much more consultative, which is what the Act enabled us to do, and to move it outside the more court-based system that we've returned to. From my perspective, I would have preferred to see the continuation of that consultative approach rather than the more judicial approach which we've returned to, but the government in its wisdom has decided to return us to that. I think that system can certainly produce good outcomes. I mean, it has in the past and continues to do so. For me, I would have liked to see more openness and consultation in the way these decisions are made, as opposed to having them simply made from the bench.
You said earlier about the idea of the way in which we have to change, and I guess there's always the challenge of change, and people are fearful of change. But when we see the growth in the amount of home-based businesses, is that a sign of the changes?
Certainly a sign of the changes. If you look back in industrial history, you effectively see that prior to the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th, early 19th century, production was mostly at home. It was cottage industry. And the Industrial Revolution moved us from the cottage industry essentially into factories and the height of the industrial boom. That changed the way society operated, the way people lived, brought about dramatic changes in human existence. Here we are now in the 21st century. As a result of distributed digital technology, we're able to reverse that process, or at least spread it, so that the idea that people need all to be in one place in large numbers to undertake production is a thing of the past. We can be involved in our homes if we wish.
So when we look at the future, do you think that's going to be really then the way in which we do move forward, that actually people become a little more settled with that kind of profile that you've painted for us?
Yeah. Oh, look, I think, you know, we're a young country. This country was settled by people who came from halfway around the world to an environment which was totally foreign to anything that they'd experienced before. All of the rules that they'd learned about life in Northern Europe and in Britain just didn't apply to a place like this. And we made lots of mistakes. In the early years, we nearly starved. But through innovation, invention, courage, determination, sheer get up and go, we have turned this country into a first world nation of 23 million people. Here in Asia, the fastest growing part of the world. How could we not have a bright future? And I think Australians, particularly the younger generation, which is so much more alive to the possibilities that lie ahead, I think we have every prospect of continuing to be one of the world's great, rich nations, but also distinctive in our own Australian way, well into the future.
Ian Harper, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Those were some really good points from Professor Ian Harper. What does our panel think about Ian's comments on the Australian economy? Ross, would you say that Ian is right in saying that Australia is capable of much more than we're achieving now?
I think so. As the Professor said, we're relatively a young country, we're a vibrant country, we're an energetic country. We've caught up to the rest of the world in a very short period of time. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to continue to innovate and continue to grow.
Brian, before we go on, could I get your final word on the importance of Australian-made products in the marketplace?
Yeah, sure. Australia-made products, what that means to us is we're keeping money in our economy, we're keeping jobs, we're keeping our skills within Australia. From a consumer's point of view is when you're buying, look at the label, make sure it's Australia-made, not somewhere else. Again, going back to the business, don't forget that we're in a global economy. We can export, send our Australian-made product out there and show them how good Australian-made product really is.
Thanks, Brian. And Ross, what about you? How do you think Australian products will fare in the future?
Well, we at Sealy really believe we can compete effectively against imports. And I think it's all about offering great value to the consumer. And to that end, we've just invested significantly in new plant and equipment to be able to produce our products more effectively. And we're about to open a new factory in Melbourne, a brand new factory down there. First time we've opened a factory from scratch for nearly 40 years. So it's really, that is our commitment to Australian-made manufacturing. It's more than just a patriotic thing. We do believe it's about bringing great value to the customers. So provided we innovate, provided we become efficient in everything we do, we promote our brand and our products effectively, and fourthly, if we service our customer really well, we believe Australian manufacturing will fare very positively in the future.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank all our panel members today for their great contribution to the discussion on Australian-made and Australian-grown products and produce. Next week on Good Business, we take a look at the contributions small businesses make to the Australian economy and how important nurturing those ideas is. Join me next week at the same time for the next insightful episode. In the meantime, keep up to date with more information about today's program and additional information about business by visiting goodbusinesstv.com.au. I'm Kathy Davis. Thank you for watching Good Business.